Vasudevaya. Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for joining us today. We continue with Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, 11th chapter, seeking your good wishes and your blessings so that we can dive into the nectar of this incredible scripture. We'd like to seek the blessings of Radha Krishna, Gaunitai, Krishna Balaram, Srila Prabhupada, Guru Maharaj as well. So let's have a look. Okay. So can you see that? Yeah, perfect.
Ulukalam vikashantam tamnabadam shram atmajam vilokyananda prahashad vadano vimochaha. When Nand Maharaj saw his own son bound with ropes to the wooden mortar, dragging it, he smiled and released Krishna from his bonds.
So 11th chapter is the childhood pastimes of Krishna, and it concludes the Damodar pastimes. And also there are other things mentioned in the 11th chapter about how inhabitants of Gokul left Gokul. They went to Vrindavan because they felt Gokul was inundated with too many demons coming and disturbing Krishna's pastimes. And also it includes the pastime of Krishna killing Vatsasura and Pakasura. So we looked at yesterday how Krishna had felled the two trees, and the Gopas and the Gopis were very shocked and happy to find him still not injured in any way, and happy and playing. So Nand Maharaj coming back, yeah. Meanwhile, they worked out that the mortar was the cause of the toppling of the trees, because they couldn't work out how did the trees fall. These are huge trees. They were perplexed, especially as Krishna was still tied to the mortar. So they said to each other,
Krishna could have been crushed and killed. No doubt Lord Narayan has protected him once again.
So their mood is always like this, that the Lord has protected our Kana, our Krishna. Of course, Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Nanda Baba was contemplating how these two powerful trees snapped at their base like twigs. So very interesting. His brother Nandana suggested that as the children were playing with Krishna all along, they may know what happened. So the Bijbasis looked at the children, who were just as perplexed as the adults. But unlike the adults, the boys were not bewildered by the mystery of who felled the trees, but by the sweetness of Damodar. They knew that he did remarkable things as they spoke up.
It was Krishna, he did it.
And they shared the pastime. Krishna was dragging the mortar between the two trees, which crashed to the ground. Demigods, devatas came out of the tree and they prayed to Krishna. And they circumambulated Krishna, and then they left, flying to heaven. Who's going to believe that? The men would not believe the children. But at least it was some kind of explanation. After the friends' disclosure of the truth of events, Krishna was a little concerned that the men may give thought to his superhuman powers and show reverence towards him. To offset such a possibility, Krishna applied his talents to childhood play, tugging at the mortar, making grunting sounds, showing irritation and not being able to easily move it. Observing Krishna's activities, the men said to each other,
what fertile imaginations boys have. What stories will they not make up to glorify their friend?
Nand Baba moved closer to his son. This was his first entrance into this Leela. Krishna was a little reserved, fearing further punishment. Nand Baba's first concern was for his son's well-being. Seeing the boy playing with his new toy, the mortar, Nand Baba inferred that Krishna was unhurt. Affectionately running his hands over Krishna's every limb, he confirmed that his son was unscathed. When Krishna moved the mortar a little, his chest swelled with Nand Baba's chest swelled with pride at his extraordinary son. Although he had no doubt about the extent of his wife's love for their son, Nand Baba was surprised at the punishment that his wife had imposed on Krishna, firstly binding him and then leaving him alone without thinking of the dangerous consequences. This was negligence. However, more than anyone else, he understood, he revered Yashoda Mai as the perfect mother. In their parenting, she was stricter, and he was a permissive, doting father. To encourage Krishna, Nand Baba smiled at him to reassure him. His father's reassuring countenance eased Krishna's mind, and he smiled widely in return. His father was not upset, even though he had been so naughty. Casting a mildly reproaching glance at his wife, Nand Baba leaned over to the mortar to untie his son. But before doing so, he looked back at Yashoda Mai to ask as if, "May I?" Without her permission, there was no chance of untying that knot. Her love is greater than his. Except for Yashoda Mai, no yogi, Gyani, Bhakta, however competent, had authority to bind the Supreme Lord to a mortar. And only one was her equal, Nand Baba, was qualified to free Krishna from the chains. And even then, only with her permission. This is the power of Yashoda Mai. Extraordinary. Yashoda Mai replied with a faint but anxious yes. With this empowerment, Nanda Baba first untied the rope binding the mortar. Then he turned to Krishna and untied the rope from Krishna's waist, repeatedly chanting, Govinda Damodar, Madhava, Govinda Damodar, Madhava. So this is the reconciliation, or at least the hug that Krishna, reassuring hug he got from Nanda Baba. With Krishna free and Nanda Maharaj embraced him, smelt his head, covered his cheeks with kisses. As the rope that bound Krishna's belly fell to the ground, it manifested its full length, which was the aggregate of all the churning ropes and cow ropes in Gokul. Nanda Maharaj was too absorbed in the ecstasy of loving his son to notice. Even if he had, he would simply have shrugged off the marvel as one of the great mystical events that followed his great son. In the spirit of a mistreated child, Krishna started to cry, and tearfully he reached his arms towards his father. Bending low, Nanda Baba lifted his son and held him close to his chest, and he said,
"Oh son, where is the evil-minded person who tied you to this mortar?"
So this is, this must be heartbreaking for Yashoda Mai. Krishna leaned towards father's cheeks and wrapped his arms around his neck. Speaking into the father's ear, but loud enough for others to hear, he replied, "Father, it was mother who did it." Nanda Baba's eyes found his wife, who was trying to hide behind her friends.
"That cannot be, son. You must be mistaken."
"No, father, she did it. You can ask any of them others here. They were there too." Nand Baba turned to the other ladies, but they all lowered their faces or covered their eyes with their veils. The king was upset that his son had been placed in jeopardy. He knew that Yashoda Mai will regret her conduct, and no words of reprimand from him will match her self-censure. Of course, Yashoda Mai was completely devastated. He knew the depth of her love for her son, for their son, and how much pain that love must now be causing her. So he did not chastise his wife. The young boys closed around to comfort Krishna and confirm Krishna's words. Krishna's words, and told Nand Baba what had happened, adding to what they had said before.
When Krishna went between the two trees, the mortar got stuck sideways and the trees fell with a crash. The trees fell sideways and never touched Krishna, not even a leaf.
Smiling as if he believed the boys, Nand Maharaj remained doubtful.
These boys go on, the stories that dream up.
Then the Vrajavasis came to reassure Krishna that his ordeal was over. First came the men, then the women. They caressed Krishna, smelled his head, offered words of comfort, and they joined together in the Sankirtan of Krishna's pastimes, as the Brahmins recited Vedic hymns. The only ones who did not come were Yashoda Mai and her friends. She stood behind the trees watching the proceedings. Too ashamed to remain, she, assisted by her friends, returned to the palace, covering her tear-stricken face with a veil. So she was completely devastated. Couldn't face anybody. At that moment, Yashoda Mai reached the palace gates, Rohini and Balaram arrived from Sahara. Yashoda Mai embraced Rohini, crying uncontrollably. News of the fallen trees had already reached them, but Rohini did not expect this. Why was she so distraught? She turned to Balaram and asked him to bring his brother to the palace. She knew Yashoda Mai's sorrow can be cured by the embrace of Krishna. Handsome Balaram ran down the hill. He looked for the legendary urchin trees.
Where are they?
In the meantime, Yashoda Mai was inconsolable. Only when the joyful Vrijbasis entered the palace with Krishna was she able to compose herself enough to go to her apartment and lock herself in. Nand Baba wanted to purify his son from the day's misfortune and decided on a bath in the Yamuna. As they walked hand in hand to the river, Balaram caught up with them and embraced Krishna. He asked Krishna a barrage of questions.
What is this new name you have? Why did mother tie you up? Did you really pull down those trees?
Krishna was reserved. Just when he needed his brother the most, he wasn't there. He felt abandoned. He would not respond to Balaram in his usual affable self. Balaram was taken aback by Krishna's sulky mood, but a wink from Nanda Baba told him, be patient. The three of them went to Rajghat, accompanied by singing Vrijbasis, mantra-chanting Brahmins. After bathing and performing purificatory ceremonies in the Ghat, Krishna and Balaram, they distributed gifts to all who were present. After this, they went to the palace, wondering if there would be any dinner. Remember, Krishna had by now missed several meals. Of course, dinner was ready. Rohini reminded Yashoda Mai that her son had not eaten since morning, and even that was an unfinished meal. As sad and embarrassed as she was, Yashoda Mai immediately set out about the task of organizing dinner. She guided her maidservants and friends to the palace kitchen and cooked herself. Meanwhile, Rohini set the table in the grand dining hall, presuming there will be many guests for dinner. After the meal was prepared, Yashoda Mai again felt the weight of guilt and retired to her own chambers, where she locked herself in. Even a moment seemed like a lifetime to Yashoda Mai, who was waiting until fate would again reunite her with Krishna. As dinner was ready, Nanda Baba and his sons, together with the guests, entered the dining hall and were happily discussing the day's events. In the meantime, Yashoda Mai remained seated on the edge of her bed, staring at the door, waiting for Krishna to open it. But he did not. After dinner, Nanda Baba took Krishna and Balaram to the cowshed to oversee the milking of the cows. There was especially a beautiful white cow which Nanda Baba would personally milk. Today, he showed the two boys how to milk this majestic cow. He filled a bucket of milk from her, then gave milk to the two boys and also to Krishna's friends who were with him. Today was Diwali, and there was going to be an evening of festivities. But Nanda Baba decided it was wiser to resolve the conflict between mother and son rather than attend the festivities. They headed back to the palace. The ladies informed that Yashoda Mai had not eaten, was not speaking to anyone, and feeling very sad. She was, of course, sad for tying up Krishna, but her sorrow increased 1,000-fold by her son's neglect of her. Nanda Baba embraced his son and placed him on his lap, putting the question to Krishna.
Dear boy, these ladies say that your mother is very sad. Will you go in and appease her like a dutiful son?
Krishna looked up at his father and replied assertively, "No, I will not. From now on, I will always remain with you, father." The ladies asked Krishna.
If you do not go to your mother, and whose breast will you suckle?
Krishna was ready with an answer. "I'm a big boy now. I can drink milk, warm milk from the white monarch of my father's cow, just like I did today."
Then with whom will you play? Who can entertain you in those ways at which your mother is most apt?
My father will do it. I will play with my father. He's the empress of all gamesters, and I will play with Balaram as well. Krishna had forgiven Balaram because Balaram related to him that he was forced to go with mother. And if he had stayed behind, Yashodamai would not have been able to tie him. He was, of course, overestimating his power in relation to Yashodamai's love for Krishna. There was no contest. So Balaram was explaining to Krishna, I would have stayed, but I was forced. And if I had stayed, no chance. Mother, we wouldn't have been able to bind you.
What about your brother's mother, Rohini Devi? Will you go to her?
No, I will not go to either. She abandoned me, as a result of which I was shackled all day. When Rohini heard from Krishna, tears welled in her eyes. She loved Krishna even more than Balaram. That's extraordinary. Searching for some way to uproot his stubbornness, she appealed to Krishna's love for his mother.
Oh, my son, how can you be so heartless and cause your mother such pain? Even Dhruv Maharaj forgave his stepmother, as did Lord Ram. Why can you not find it in your heart to do so?
The authority of his father's support fueled Krishna's huff. Turning from Rohini's to Nanda Baba, Krishna buried his face in his father's loving arms. Nanda Baba, embraced Krishna tightly, but he could sense that the boy still longed for the sanctuary of his mother's tender love and warmth. For Krishna, there was no embrace like that of Yashodamai. Even though he was certainly enjoying these rare, tender moments with his darling son, being free of any trace of envy, Nanda Baba devised a plan to conjure up Krishna's suppressed affection for his mother. Holding Krishna at arm's length and in the tone of royal proclamation, Nanda Baba raised a slightly threatening hand and said,
"Son, say the word, I will give that woman a suitable thrashing. As king of Raj, I cannot tolerate injustice. If a sin is perpetrated by one of my own family, I must act on it, lodge a complaint, and then just see what I will do."
So this is a fantastic ploy. Nanda Baba is the master. He's a great king. So he found a way to break this cold-heartedness by Krishna. Nanda Baba's strategy worked like a charm. The very thought of anybody striking his mother obliterated Krishna's huff and brought tears to his eyes. Getting hold of Nanda Baba's threatening hand, Krishna shouted, "No, you can't." As a perfect strategist, the monarch unfolded the second phase of the scheme. Appearing to ponder Yashodamai's past conduct and her present isolation, Nanda said,
"You're right, my son. Someone who put another in mortal danger should not be surprised if fate metes out the same punishment to them."
The ladies of the cold grass gasped. Krishna called out again, "No, that can never be. Never." Krishna was finally unable to tolerate separation from his mother. Jumping off his father's lap, she delighted Nanda Baba and frantically cried, "Where is my mother? I have to go there. Where is she?" Krishna ran to Rohini for shelter, repeatedly crying, "Where is mother? Where is mother?" Rohini comforted the boy and embraced him, assuring him,
"Do not fret. Come with me. I will take you to your mother."
After what seemed like eternity, Yashodamai saw her door open cautiously and silently. Only Rohini and Krishna were so bold. It was both. As soon as Krishna saw his mother through his tears, Krishna ran, weeping to Yashodamai, climbed onto her lap and wrapped his arms around her neck. The aggregate of all happiness in the world, multiplied 1,000,000 times, could not match a drop of the ecstasy Yashodamai felt with Krishna in her arms. Similarly, if the aggregate of all the love in the world was multiplied 1,000,000 times, it would not match a drop of the love that Krishna felt from Yashodamai's embrace. Must have been a most magical moment. Holding each other's heart to heart, they both felt complete for each other. Each was a half of the whole that was their union. Rohini reminded Yashodamai, Krishna must still be hungry, as he had missed several meals. When Yashodamai heard the words, "Will you not feed your son?" she immediately came to external consciousness. Like a dutiful mother, she pleased Krishna with her breast milk. Rohini had the dining room set by the maidservants in the privacy of Yashodamai's quarters and said to Yashodamai,
"Now you must dine with your son, for he has been picking at his dinner without your presence."
Hearing these words, Yashodamai finally rose to her feet with Krishna still in her arms, took a seat at the table. Balaram also came rushing to Yashodamai, and the queen embraced him with her free arm. For each morsel that Krishna ate from her blessed hand, Yashodamai would eat an equal amount. Krishna, eat, mother, eat more.
"If you eat more, I will match you."
Krishna was won over. However, Yashodamai could hardly face her husband. She also feared the censure of the villagers. However, right now, those fears had to be put aside in order to serve Krishna. Krishna was tired. Balaram, Rohini took their leave. Yashodamai lovingly held Krishna in her arms for some time. Then she placed him in the same bed from which he rose that morning. Krishna asked his mother to tell him a story. She told him the story of Dhruv, which Krishna, especially of Dhruv, where Narad Muni advised the little boy. And then Krishna gradually fell asleep. For 3 days, Yashodamai remained in her chambers, afraid to appear before the king. At the start of breakfast from the 4th day, Nand Baba requested his son,
"My boy, your mother is sulking and has thus deprived us of her excellent services. Please go to her, and only in the way that you know how, ask her to once again grace us with her presence. We miss her terribly."
Krishna immediately went to fetch Yashodamai, and soon after he emerged with her. Yashodamai's face was flushed with embarrassment. But Nand Maharaj did not say anything negative to her, concluding that her pain in days of exile was sufficient punishment. He said,
"O goddess, whose glories are sung throughout this land and beyond, O you who are maternal affection personified, although we have eaten excellent preparations in the last 3 days, without the touch of your lotus hand, even the best of food has not satisfied us. No matter what Rohini Devi cooks, your whimsical son will not eat because it has not been served by you. Please save him from wasting away and thus save us all who live only for him."
Yashodamai's eyes welled with tears, her heart flooded with bliss, and symptoms of ecstasy danced in every limb of her body. In the days following the reconciliation of this divine family, the Brijbasis continued to give moral support to both Queen and her darling son. The ladies hungered to help heal the wounds caused to both Yashodamai and Krishna from recent events. They would, like honeybees attracted to Krishna and the irresistible sweetness, the smile, features, speech, everything indescribably attractive to the senses, mind, and heart. Everything that he was or did was a novel intoxicant. Every moment with Krishna was a festival of indescribable joy. Just as he completely mesmerized the Brijbasis, Krishna was also completely mesmerized by them. Yashoda Damoda ki jai. So that's the end of the Damoda Leela. The chapter doesn't end, it continues. Krishna every day, at every moment, displayed wonderful incidents to increase the affection of Yashoda and the gopis, who felt both surprise and joy. The gopis would say,
"If you dance, my dear Krishna, then I shall give you half a laddu."
At such times, although he was the supremely powerful personality of Godhead, he would smile and dance according to their desires, as if he was a wooden doll in their hands. Sometimes he would sing very loudly at their bidding. In this way, Krishna came completely under the control of the gopis. Sometimes they would order him to bring a wooden plank wooden shoes or a wooden measuring pot. And Krishna, when thus ordered by his mothers, would try to bring them. Sometimes, however, as if unable to raise these things, he would touch them and stand there. Just to invite the pleasure of his relatives, he would strike his body with his arms to show he had sufficient strength. In this way, he increased the pleasure of the Brijbasis by his childhood activities. So this is a really fantastic picture. He would bring the shoes of Nanda Baba on his head. Sometimes while worshipping Narayan, his father would ask the child to bring his wooden slippers. Krishna, with great difficulty, would take the slippers of his head and bring them before the father. When he was asked to lift some heavy article or unable to lift such article, he would simply move his arms. In this way, daily at every moment, he was a reservoir of all pleasure to his parents. Very nice lesson to learn from that is, although Krishna appears just like a baby, we must understand he's a supreme Lord, enjoying pastimes with his close devotees. He wanted to show the sages that he is controlled by the love of his devotees. Then we have this fantastic pastime with the fruit vendor. One day, a fruit vendor approached Nanda Maharaj's house. Krishna gathered some food grains with his little palms and went to the vendor to exchange the grains for fruit. On the way, almost all the grains fell from his palms. Only 1 or 2 grains remained. But the fruit vendor, out of full affection, accepted these grains in exchange for as much fruit as Krishna could take. As soon as she did this, her basket filled with gold and jewels. This is really wonderful, wonderful pastime. She would call out, fruit, anybody would like some phal? And Krishna would come out and go back into the house, bring a few grains. She was so mesmerized by her love. She was so captivated by the beauty of it. She immediately accepted whatever few grains were placed in his palms and filled up his hands with fruits. It's a very good lesson, of course. The Lord is the bestower of all benedictions. Somebody gives something to the Lord, he's not the loser, he's the gainer, a million times. What can we possibly give to the Lord? He's got everything. But this fruit vendor gave her love. She gave her love through the fruit, and he accepted it. So we can do the same, right? What can we possibly give to the Lord? But whatever we have, we can try to offer to the Lord, especially our seva. He becomes pleased. Once Rohini went to call Krishna and Balaram, who had gone to the riverside to play with the other boys. As they were enjoying playing with the Gopas, they did not listen to Rohini. So they were so engrossed in this playing, they would ignore Rohini. But Rohini would send then Yashoda Mai to call them. Yashoda Mai was more powerful than Rohini. Yashoda Mai would try to persuade them to return home by saying,
"You must be tired playing so long. Please come back, as you have not eaten since morning because of playing all day. Your body has become covered with dust and sand. Therefore, come back, take your bath and cleanse yourself. Today, the moon is conjoined with the auspicious star of your birth. Therefore, be pure and give cows and charity to the Brahmins. Your father is waiting for you."
She then took them by the hand and brought them home, where she performed her duties by fully bathing them, dressing them, feeding them. But sometimes they wouldn't return because Krishna was really enjoying the play. And also the cowherd boys, they were really cunning. They would say to Krishna, your mother's come. If you go now, we won't let you come and play tomorrow. And Krishna, Balaram, they would say, okay, we'll play. We'll continue playing with you. So there was one incident we heard some time ago when Mother Yashoda was trying to persuade Krishna and Balaram to come in. So she looked far beyond and she said to Krishna, there's a demon coming. how Bilal is coming. He's going to catch you. And Krishna and Balaram ran in fright into the home of Yashoda Mai. And then later on, Balaram would ask Krishna, did you see the demon? Krishna said, no, I didn't, but he must have been fierce. So in this way, Yashoda Mai had many tricks up her sleeve to get Krishna and Balaram to come in, because they would also miss them. When they were playing with the cowherd boys, Yashoda Mai's mind, Nand Baba's mind was simply on Krishna, wonder what's happening. And when they go in, the Gopas would be very sad, missing Krishna. When is Krishna coming back? When is the morning going to come again? Thereafter, all the elderly Gopas, led by Nanda Maharaj and Upananda, the elder brother of Nanda Maharaj, decided to leave Gokul, because they saw that in Gokul, there were always some disturbances by demons such as Putana, Trinivarta, Sakatasura, trying to harm Balaram and Krishna. They decided to go to beautiful Vrindavan. Between Nandeshwar and Mahavan, Vrindavan is a very suitable place because it is lush with grass, plants, creepers for the cows and other animals. It has nice gardens, it's full of facilities for the happiness of all the Gopas and Gopis and our animals. So the very next day they departed. Krishna was 2 years, 2 months, just after the Damodar Leela. So the lesson from this is sometimes when things are just not changing favorably, we have to move on, right? Like the Bijbasis, they moved from their beloved Gokul to Vrindavan. Tough decision, but they made the decision. It's just not favorable for bhakti, let's go. Sometimes we have to do that. To protect ourselves, protect our bhakti, we may come across situations which are really disturbing to our consciousness. What do? Do we let our consciousness go down? Or do we try to maintain our bhakti? So we have to make the call ourselves. Keeping all paraphernalia on the bullock carts and keeping all the cows in front, the Gopas sounded bugles and, accompanied by their priests, began their journey. As they rode, they began to chant with great pleasure the pastimes of Krishna. Thus, hearing about the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram with great pleasure, Mother Yashoda and Rohini Devi, so as not to be separated from Krishna and Balaram even for a moment, got up with them on one bullock cart. In this situation, they all looked very beautiful. In this way, they entered Vrindavan. And when Balaram and Krishna saw Vrindavan, Govardhan and the banks of the river Yamuna, they both enjoyed great pleasure. In Vrindavan, both Krishna and Balaram, after finishing their childhood pastimes, began to take charge of the calves, sending them to the pasturing grounds or going with them to the pasturing grounds, Gocharan, and began to tend the cows. They were given charge of these calves. The boys are trained in this from the beginning of their childhood. So along with the other Gopas, little boys, they went into the pasturing grounds and took charge of the calves, playing with their playmates. The two brothers sometimes played on their flutes. Sometimes they played with amaliki fruits and bale fruits, just like small children play with balls. Sometimes they danced, made tinkling sounds with their ankle bells. Sometimes they would imitate cows and bulls and fight with one another, roaring loudly. And sometimes they would imitate the voices of the animals. So the lesson from that, from a young age, it's nice if we can learn to also help our parents. So these things we produce for the children's Sangha. So good lessons in here. So there's some nice interaction between Krishna and the calves. Very attracted to the calves as they are attracted to him, playing their bugles and walking to the forest with the Gopas. We stuck in a picture of Radharani because she also is very attracted to Gomata. although she's not mentioned explicitly in this Bhagavatam. Okay, then the demons. When Krishna...
I know the story.
Okay, you want to tell it?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Go on then.
Once there was a demon named Vatsasura, and he saw Krishna playing with his friends. So he saw all cows and calves near Krishna. So he took the form of a calf and went to Krishna. After Krishna knew that it was the demon, so Krishna he hold the tail of the calf, and he started spinning, and finally he collapsed on the tree.
Very good. That's right. He swung him around and smashed him into a tree, a special fruit tree, no less. And this, Kapita. Now, usually these demons would come just before lunch. So it was a bit of a break. It was a bit of a dramatical break that they enjoy. And Krishna would do many things with one act. This fruit, the Gopas actually wanted to taste this fruit. So Krishna smashed Vatsasura against the tree, and all these fruits fell, and then they ate those fruits. And interesting how Krishna doesn't use his Sudarshan Chakra in Vrindavan, especially in Vrindavan. He doesn't use any weapons, practically speaking, it's just his hands, so as not to disturb his friends. If he brought out his Sudarshan Chakra, they know that this is one of the symbols of Vishnu. And this Vatsasura, he actually represents this childish mentality of deception. He disguised himself as a calf. And if we're not careful, we've got to be mindful that deception, not simplicity or sincerity, it will block our progress in spiritual life. Simplicity and straightforwardness is the answer. So it's really quite interesting. So when we remember the past and Vatsasura, we're actually destroying this art of deception within ourselves. Upon seeing the dead body of the demon, Vatsasura, all the cowherd boys exclaimed, "Well done, Krishna. Very good, thank you." In the upper planetary systems, all the demigods were pleased. Therefore, they showered the flowers on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So they're watching, they're enjoying these leelas taking place between the Lord and his intimate friends. Another day, all the Gopas, including Krishna and Balaram, each taking their own group of calves, brought the calves to a reservoir of water, desiring to drink, allowing the calves to drink the water. And after the animals drank, the boys drank the water as well. Then the boys saw gigantic bodies resembling a mountain peak, broken and struck by a thunderbolt. They were afraid even to see such a huge living being. That great bodied demon was named Bakasura. He had assumed the form of a duck with very sharp beak. There you go. He's a stork demon, the duck demon. He swallowed Krishna whole, and his friends were shocked. They were wondering what's going on. Krishna became unbearably hot inside the demon, that so much so that Bakasura had to vomit Krishna out. Krishna came out completely fresh. Bakasura tried to stab him. It was a stork, so he tried to use his beaks to stab Krishna. And in that way, Krishna danced. Every time Bakasura would come after him, Krishna would dance out of the way. Krishna pulled the beaks apart eventually, splitting Bakasura and killing him. Everybody celebrated. So the lesson from that is Krishna is so attractive. Even the art of killing a demon was artistic. You do everything with such grace. And Vijvas is they would become astonished after playing on the banks of the Yamuna. The Gopas, cowherd boy friends of Krishna, would arrive home and speak about Krishna's glories and the victorious activities to Nand and the elders. Thinking that the child Krishna was saved from the mouth of death, they began to see his face with great affection and love, giving him lots of hugs and thanking Lord Hari. Due to their intense love for Krishna, the Brijabasis would not believe that Krishna is Supreme Lord, but was saved by Lord Vishnu. Lesson from this is that they loved him so much, even if they would think that, oh, maybe Krishna, whether Krishna is God or not, doesn't really matter. He's ours. He belongs to us. It's not that we belong to him. He belongs to us. This is a wonderful picture, which is along the Yamuna, where Krishna and the cowherd boys and the calves, they're all playing amazing pastimes. So that's the end of chapter 11 of Canto 10. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Any questions? Any comments?
Just one thing. Very sweet pastimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
I keep saying that what would happen when Krishna and Balaram they leave for Mathura? That's my only. all this would be gone.
Yes.
All this pleasure and how much distress to Yashodama, who couldn't even see him separated and they sat in the same cart.
Yeah, that's right. You're absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
He said that when they cried, rivers, they would form rivers with their tears. That much was how much crying they would do. Uddhav was asked by Krishna, go to Vrindavan. He said, where's Vrindavan? Follow the river. He said, these are rivers of tears of my devotees. Yeah. But in that separation was also felt the greatest ecstasy as well. And this is something for us very hard to understand because we cannot relate to that. But this is what the acharyas tell us. That in that separation from Krishna, the devotees would, their bhakti would intensify so much so that even though Krishna was not present, they were unhappy externally, inside they were dancing with joy of being so connected with Krishna. And similarly, Krishna, he had the same ecstasy. He would outside be very upset by not being with the Brijabasis, but the separation was also giving him great, like the thoughts of the pastime, the remembrances of the pastime, the feeling of love that he got from them. It would intensify within himself and he would get great joy. But for us, that's really tough to get our heads around that. Very hard to get our heads around that. But in the separation is the greatest joy. It's a little bit like when Yashoda Mai, she was singing Krishna's pastime, although Krishna was just right there in the bed, asleep. But because she was so much in the ecstasy of singing and remembering the pastime, she even forgot Krishna was in the bed because the intensity of the connection with Krishna was so strong. Even his physical presence, it even surpassed the physical presence of Krishna. So
amazing.
It is extraordinary, extraordinary. Yeah, extraordinary. But yeah, Naniban, you're right. That act when he left was really pitiful when he left. But of course, he never leaves Vrindavan. So we'll come on to that. I think it's chapter 40 or something like that. A little way to go yet. Okay, so
Hare Krishna.
Yes, would you like to read?
Yeah, he's not here. Sorry.
Yeah, yes.
Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Instructions for Canto 10, chapter 11. We may not want disturbances, but Srila Prabhupada instructs that even during the presence of Krishna, when Nanda Maharaj and the other cowherd men had the Supreme Personality of God in their presence, there were disturbances. Of course, in every case, Krishna came out of victorious, and that we should not. Oh, who's that? And that we should not be disturbed by so-called disturbances, and that there are both encouragement and disturbances. So with the disturbances, there will also be encouragements. Also in purport to verse 58, Prabhupada instructs, Nanda Maharaj and Yashodamaya in Vrindavan appeared like ordinary persons of the material world, but they never felt the tribulations of this world. Although they sometimes met many dangerous situations created by the demons, this is a practical example. If we follow in the footsteps of Nanda Maharaj and the Gopas, we can all be happy simply by discussing the activities of Krishna. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has therefore declared, Sarvam Sarvama Sna Mam Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, so any more questions or anything that anybody would like to say, contribute? Otherwise, we can pray.
Horrible. I was just going to say, it just sounds so magical. When you imagine things happening and Krishna quietly just endures and let things happen. And Yashodamaya, if she's crying, it just makes you feel, wow, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it is extraordinary.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, love between them is just beyond description. Beyond description. Thank you. And must thank Shivaram Maharaj because he wrote this very nice book, Damodar Janani, and in it is the previous Acharya's commentaries on this Leela. So it's very nice to have that. Otherwise, we would never even have a clue about the detailed pastimes. So even this is just scratching the surface.
I think in young days, heard all these stories, but now it makes sense because you know the details, and the details are that how Krishna's magical things work and how he actually was and has declared himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I mean, he's not declared, but it just shows, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Okay, thank you so much. Hare Krishna.